Hello everyone, welcome back to the Alabama Woodworker. My name is Hui. In my last video, I milled and machined the joinery for the bases of the sewing table and stool and left off with the bases dry assembled. I'll get back to the base assemblies in a later video. In this video, I'm going to construct the curly cherry veneered tabletop, which features a solid cherry border joined with bridle joints, 1/8 inch holly stringing inlay, and an under bevel for edge treatment. We've got tons of work to do, so let's get started. The tabletop consists of an MDF core, which I'll be veneering with a commercially bought raw wood curly cherry veneer. The setup I have here is to cut the veneer to length. I'm using 2 pieces of Baltic birch that are sandwiching the raw veneer. I'm going to use my veneer saw riding up against the edge of the Baltic birch to cut it to length. The veneer for the tabletop is actually going to be book matched, and in order to get a seamless joint, I'm going to place these pieces back together and sandwich them between the Baltic birch plywood and use my track saw to joint the edges. With the edge of the veneer jointed, I'm going to keep everything sandwiched together again using the spring clips, and I'm going to mark now 8 3/4 of an inch. Because these pieces are book matched, when they unfold, they'll come out to 17.5 inches, which is the width of my MDF core. Now I'll flip this piece over 180 degrees. After playing with the layout of the veneer, I've decided that this is going to be the show face of the top of the tabletop, and this is going to be the show face of the bottom of the tabletop. So I'm going to take the show face, flip it down, and using blue painter's tape, I'm going to draw that joint together and use this as a temporary clamp for using the veneer tape. I'm going to be using veneer tape on the show face. Veneer tape is activated with water, and once the water evaporates, I'll flip it over and remove the temporary blue painter's tape. I'm going to be using my vacuum bag and pump to clamp the veneer onto the MDF substrate. I've got my glue ready, my roller ready, my bag is out with the platen in it, and my vacuum pump is all ready to go. So let's go ahead and get started with this glue up. I've completed the veneer work on the tabletop infield. Now I'm going to cut it to final length and width. I'm using blue painter's tape around the border, and this will prevent the veneer from chipping out as I cut it. I'm going to use the track saw to establish a square edge, and then I'm going to finish cutting it to final length and width on the table saw. After the infield is cut to final length and width, I'll mill up pieces which will make up the solid cherry border. The veneered infield is cut to final length and width, and the solid cherry border is all milled up. Now what I need to do is lay out and cut the bridle joints for all 4 of the corners, and then attach the borders using dominoes as an alignment aid. I machined and fitted all of the bridle joints, and I also laid out all the locations for the dominoes. I'm now going to go ahead and cut the dominoes and glue up the border to the tabletop. The solid cherry border is attached, and it's slightly proud of the veneered infield. So what I'm going to do is just use my random orbit sander and feather that edge so that it's nice and flush. There are 2 more features to this tabletop that I need to add, one of which is routing a channel for this 1/8" holly inlay, which will go around the border of the veneer. I'm using my trim router with an 1/8" router bit and an edge guide to go and make a pass all around the border. Unfortunately, the 1/8" router bit is slightly undersized for this 1/8" holly. So I'll take a measurement and then move my fence over by that difference and do a second pass. So this supposed 1/8" groove is undersized for this holly here. The holly actually measures 0.126, whereas the groove measures 0.123. So I need my fence to move over by 3/1000ths of an inch, and maybe even 1 more thousandth than that to make sure that I get enough clearance. Let's give this a shot. So on my second pass, I moved the fence over by 4/1000ths of an inch, leaving 1/1000th of an inch for clearance. So let's see if this holly fits. It fits. With my shooting board, low angle jack, chisel, and marking gauge, I'm going to fit the inlay to the routed channel. The tabletop is almost complete. All I have to do now is cut it to final length and width, and then put a 15-degree bevel angle to give some shape to the edge. The veneered tabletop came out better than I expected. The seams to the book-matched veneer are tight, and the surface appears to be stable without any visible signs of movement or creep. At least not yet. However, the bridle joints did show some pencil-line gaps, but they disappeared with a mixture of hide glue and sawdust to fill those gaps. Unfortunately, I didn't film myself filling those gaps. Finally, the holly string came out looking great with tight miters at the corners and flush to the table surface. If you have questions or comments, please leave them below. If you like what you saw, please hit the like button or the subscribe button, or both. You can also follow me on Instagram at Alabama Woodworker to get the day-to-day scoop on what's happening in the shop. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.